Arguing is a sign of weakness. Here's why. Have you ever noticed that the loudest voices in the room are often the most insecure? That the people who argue the most passionately, who fight to prove they are right, who refuse to back down no matter how irrational their stance becomes, they are not actually the strongest, but the weakest. We've been taught that arguing is a sign of intelligence, of strength, of confidence. That if you can debate well, if you can dismantle someone's point and outmaneuver them with logic, then you are somehow superior. But what if I told you that the very act of arguing is, in itself, a sign of deep insecurity? That the need to prove yourself right is not a demonstration of power, but a desperate attempt to cover up a lack of true understanding. Think about it. If you are truly secure in what you know, if you are genuinely confident in your perspective, why would you need to argue at all? Why would you need to force someone else to see things your way? The truth does not need to be shouted. Wisdom does not need to be defended. Reality does not change just because someone refuses to accept it. So why do people argue? It's because they are not actually trying to find the truth, they are trying to win. They are trying to assert dominance, to validate themselves, to cover up the nagging fear that maybe, just maybe, they don't know as much as they think they do.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
The strongest people, the wisest thinkers, the most enlightened minds, they do not argue. They discuss, they explore, they ask questions, they listen. They let people believe what they want to believe because they understand that forcing someone to see your perspective is not strength, it's control. And control is always rooted in fear. The fear of being wrong, fear of being challenged, fear of losing the fragile sense of superiority that the ego clings to. But here's something even more fascinating. People who argue the most are often the ones who are the most easily manipulated. If someone knows that you have an emotional need to be right, they can control you effortlessly. All they have to do is challenge you, push your buttons, make you feel like your intelligence is being questioned, and suddenly you are no longer thinking clearly. You are reacting. You are emotional. You are engaged in a battle that does not need to be fought, wasting energy proving something to someone who was never interested in understanding you in the first place. So here's the real question. What happens when you stop arguing? What happens when you let go of the need to prove yourself? What happens when, instead of engaging, you simply observe? You will start to notice something profound. People who argue are not looking for truth. They are looking for validation. They are not interested in growth. They are interested in control. And the moment you refuse to engage, the moment you stop feeding that energy, they lose their power over you. But this raises an even deeper question. If arguing is a sign of weakness, then what is true strength? How do we navigate a world where people constantly challenge us, where opinions clash, where misunderstandings are inevitable? But the answer lies in something far greater than debate, far more powerful than proving yourself right. The power of silence. Why true strength needs no defense. If you observe the world carefully, you'll notice something strange. The most powerful people, but the ones who truly shape reality, rarely argue. But they do not waste words in empty debates. They do not feel the need to convince others of their intelligence. They do not react emotionally to every challenge thrown their way. Instead, they listen, they watch, they understand. And when they do speak, their words carry weight not because they are loud, not because they dominate conversations, but because they only say what is necessary. Silence is a weapon far greater than any argument. It forces people to confront their own thoughts. It makes them question why they need your validation, why they are so desperate to pull you into a debate. When you refuse to argue, you force the other person to wrestle with the emptiness of their own position. They are no longer fighting you, they are fighting themselves. And that is a battle most people are not prepared for. But why does silence hold so much power? Because it demonstrates something that arguing never can: absolute confidence. When you are silent in the face of provocation, when you do not feel the need to defend yourself against petty attacks, you send a message that is louder than any words could ever be: I know who I am. I do not need to prove it to you. And when someone realizes they cannot shake you, they cannot control you, they cannot drag you into their emotional chaos, but they either walk away or they start to question themselves. Either way, you win, not because you destroyed them in a debate, but because you refused to play their game in the first place. Now, some people might say, but what if I need to stand up for myself? What if someone is spreading misinformation? What if people are wrong and it's important that they see the truth? These are valid concerns, but the answer is still the same: arguing is not the way. Truth does not need force. It does not need to be pushed, shoved, or imposed upon others. It simply is, and those who are ready for it will find it. Those who are not will reject it, no matter how much logic or evidence you throw at them. Look at history. The greatest minds, the ones who introduced revolutionary ideas, were often met with resistance, ridicule, even persecution. Did they waste their time arguing with everyone who doubted them? No, they focused on their work. They continued spreading their ideas not through endless debates, but through action, through results, through the slow but inevitable process of truth revealing itself over time. When you argue, you assume that the other person is ready to understand. But most people do not listen to learn, they listen to respond. But they are not looking for enlightenment, they are looking for victory. And when you engage in that kind of battle, you lower yourself to their level. You become consumed by the need to win, to prove, to validate yourself. And in doing so, you lose sight of the bigger picture. But this leads to an even deeper realization: if silence is more powerful than arguing, then why do so many people struggle to embrace it? Why do we feel the need to defend ourselves, to prove our intelligence, to fight for our beliefs? The answer lies in something far more profound than simple ego. It lies in our fear of being insignificant. The fear of insignificance, why we argue to prove we exist at the core of all human behavior, lies one fundamental fear: the fear of being insignificant. We do not admit this to ourselves, but it drives nearly everything we do. It is the reason we seek recognition, the reason we chase success, the reason we surround ourselves with people who reflect back to us a version of ourselves that feels important. And it is also the reason we argue. Because to argue is to insist that we matter. It is to demand that our thoughts, our beliefs, our opinions be acknowledged, validated, and respected. But what happens when someone refuses to acknowledge us? What happens when they dismiss our ideas, when they reject our perspective, when they do not give us the validation we crave? Most people react with frustration, with anger, with an even greater need to prove themselves. Because deep down, the argument was never about truth, it was about existence. To win an argument is to establish dominance, to force the world to recognize that we are here, that we have a voice, that we are not invisible. And that is why arguing feels so addictive. It is not just an intellectual battle, it is an emotional one. It gives us a sense of power, of control, of significance. But here is the paradox: those who truly understand their worth do not need to prove it. They do not argue because they do not need validation. They do not need others to agree with them in order to feel secure in their own existence. They do not seek recognition because they recognize themselves. And that is why they seem untouchable, why their presence commands respect without effort. They have transcended the fear that keeps most people trapped in endless debates, in desperate battles to be seen and heard. But if arguing is a symptom of insecurity, then why do we see even highly intelligent, highly accomplished people engage in it? Why do philosophers, scientists, leaders, people we admire for their intellect still fall into the trap of debate? The answer is simple: awareness is not the same as mastery. You can be brilliant and still be controlled by your emotions. You can understand logic and still be trapped by ego. You can know the truth but still feel the need to defend it, because deep down, you are still fighting the fear of being insignificant. The real test of wisdom is not knowledge, it is detachment. It is the ability to let go of the need to be right, the need to be acknowledged, the need to win. And this is where most people fail, because letting go of that need feels like surrender. It feels like weakness. It feels like disappearing. But in reality, it is the only path to true power. Because when you no longer need to argue, when you no longer seek validation, you become something far greater than someone who wins debates. You become someone who is free. But this raises an even deeper question: if arguing is a weakness, if silence is power, then how do we engage with the world? How do we stand up for what we believe in without falling into the same traps as those who argue out of insecurity? The answer lies not in avoiding confrontation, but in mastering the art of influence. The art of influence, how to shape the world without arguing. If arguing is a sign of weakness, then what is true strength? If debating endlessly is just a symptom of insecurity, then how do we engage with the world in a way that actually makes an impact? The answer lies in something far more powerful than argument: persuasion without force, influence without resistance, the ability to shape minds, to shift perspectives, to guide people toward the truth without ever needing to impose it upon them. The strongest individuals in history, the ones who truly changed the world, did not do so by arguing. They did not waste their energy trying to convince those who refused to listen. Instead, they mastered the art of influence by embodying their beliefs so fully, so undeniably, that people had no choice but to take notice. Instead of forcing their ideas onto others, they became living proof of those ideas. They let their actions, their presence, their undeniable results speak louder than words ever could. This is the secret that few understand. People do not change their minds because they lose an argument. They change their minds because they see something they cannot ignore. A truth so evident, so powerful, that it forces them to reconsider everything they once believed. And this kind of shift does not happen through debate. It happens through demonstration. Think about the last time you truly changed your perspective on something important. But did it happen because someone argued with you? Because someone beat you in a debate and forced you to admit you were wrong? Or did it happen because you saw something, a result, a truth, an undeniable reality that made you question yourself? The most profound changes in human thinking do not come from being defeated in an argument, but they come from experiencing something that makes an argument unnecessary. This is why the strongest people do not seek to convince, they seek to embody. They do not waste time trying to force others to see things their way. They live their truth so completely that others are drawn to it on their own. And this is why they hold real power, because their influence does not depend on resistance. It does not require conflict. It does not need validation. It simply exists, undeniable and unshakable. But here's the real challenge. How do you apply this in your own life? How do you navigate a world filled with people who argue, who challenge, who provoke? The answer is not to disengage entirely, but to change your approach. Instead of reacting, observe. Instead of debating, demonstrate. Instead of trying to win, focus on being undeniable. When someone argues with you, ask yourself, do they seek truth or do they seek victory? If they seek truth, then guide them with wisdom. If they seek victory, then let them have it. Because in the end, empty victories mean nothing. Only truth endures. And here's the most profound realization: when you stop arguing, when you stop needing to prove yourself, you don't become less powerful. You become invincible. Because now, no one can control you. No one can manipulate you into a battle that does not need to be fought. No one can drag you into the chaos of their own insecurities. You move through the world with a quiet, unshakable confidence that commands more respect than any debate ever could. So the final question is this: do you want to win arguments, or do you want to shape reality? Do you want to be right, or do you want to be undeniable? The choice is yours. But remember, true power does not come from proving yourself. It comes from never needing to.